What's up, football fans, and welcome inside of the Soccer Locker. Just a couple of beautiful guys talking about the beautiful game. I'm Brian Skowronski, and I've got our soccer guru with us, Jesse Ryder. And when you break things down, we always get brighter with Ryder. So, Jesse, we're going to let the ladies go first because we're gentlemen out here. And let's talk about just the area of soccer right here in North Central Ohio and just some quick thoughts about what you've seen, some of the top teams, players, matchups. Break it all down for me real quick.
Absolutely. You know what's been interesting is the youthfulness of the girls' soccer in the area right now. I think when we're talking about a lot of the teams, we're focused on a lot of freshmen. And you and I have discussed before, it is hard to be a freshman and to make an instant impact.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing right now is multiple freshmen on multiple teams making multiple impacts. And so it's really kind of provided a little bit of new to our, kind of soccer landscape for the girls' side of things. So we are excited. I think the games we've seen have been competitive. They've been fun. But what makes it more fun is knowing that because they're so youthful, they're so young, they're only going to get better.
Sure.
I think the teams, the games are only going to get better. And I know I say this all the time. I can't wait till tournament time. The local area landscape is so fun, so competitive. It might be the most even it's been in the girls' side of things for a long time.
Yeah, a lot of fresh faces out there, but some really, really dynamic playmakers at the freshman level, some sophomores as well. So without further ado, Jesse, let's find out, in your opinion, who the top 5 teams in the area are for the ladies. Let's start with number 5.
Number 5, this is probably new to our top 5. And, their schedule is not a difficult schedule, but they're winning games and they're scoring goals. So I have Loudonville, the Lady Loudonville Redbirds, coming in at 6-2-1. Like I said, their schedule's not great. They don't play a lot of the top quality teams, but they do get the wins, and that's half the battle of being in the top 5 right now. Early on in the season, not everybody has played everybody. So Loudonville has a player named Sydney Poland, and she just scores goals all the time and just insane statistics. And so I think right now, if she stays healthy and continues to play at a high level, you're going to look at a team who's probably going to have 12, 13 wins by the end of the regular season.
Yeah, so definitely worthy, I think, of being on the list because wins matter. They speak volumes. Doesn't matter who the competition is as long as you're getting it done. All right, how about number 4?
Number 4 actually tied Loudonville, so it's a little difficult putting them at number 4 when you have Loudonville number 5. But I just think their strength of schedule is a little bit more difficult. I have Mansfield Christian at number 4. My struggle with Mansfield Christian is I think they're a good team. They had 2 bad lopsided losses. 2 teams who we're going to see in a minute and the rest in the countdown. But there's 2 bad losses in there. But I think when they play well, they've played well, right? And so they have the ability. They have some phenomenal players. Abby Little, I think, is one of the best players in the area, able to score goals. I think defensively they're still figuring some things out. Whenever you give up 13 goals in a game, 9 goals in a game, that's not a great statistic. So I don't think they're quite to that upper level yet, but I think they certainly have some of the top players in the area.
Yeah, because the upper level in Richland County, as we know, girls soccer here, I mean, it's just a little bit higher barometer than your standard county soccer. All right, let's move on. Number 3.
Number 3, I think this is a team we're very familiar with. It's certainly a different look for them. This would be the Madison Rams. I think they are a tough team. They just defend so well. And so they don't score a lot of goals, but when you defend at a level like Madison does, it keeps you in games. And so the games are close, they're competitive, and if they can figure out maybe, can we get 1 or 2 goals off a counterattack, a free kick, a corner kick, if they can just figure out to score consistently off of those type of plays, they're going to be a dangerous team. They're tough, they're defensive-minded, and when they can just figure out some of these little ways to score goals, I think it kind of pushes them right back into that top tier a little bit. It'll be interesting to see if they can figure that out, but they definitely have some players, and they're so good defensively, and when you're good defensively, it just keeps you in soccer games.
Yeah, you look at the record, and you're like, man, they're just 3-3-1. How are they at number 3 on this list? Well, look at the teams that they're playing. They're coming off of a loss to Northview, and Zach Huff, even though his daughter's era is behind them now in that crazy class that they had graduated a couple of years ago, still scheduling some of the top teams in the entire state of Ohio, so they are battle tested every time they get to the tournament, and that's why they've been to 5 straight regionals and maybe counting. Number 2?
Number 2, we got to see the Clear Fork Ontario game. This was really, it was going to be determining who was number 1. And so Ontario came out victorious, so it puts Clear Fork at number 2 in the area. This is a strong team. A little bit of that kind of Clear Fork curse of recent years of not being able to score big goals in big games yet. I look at a tie against Lexington, who's struggled a little bit this year. It's certainly the result against Ontario where they couldn't get on the scoreboard again, as we talked about in that broadcast. I think having to score goals in big games is a little bit of a mental barrier for them. I think they have the talent. I think they have great ability there. I think they could possibly beat Ontario if they were to meet again. But in order to do that, they've got to score big goals and big games. They just have not done that yet.
Yeah, Lady Warriors have certainly had their number, but they were a great team last night despite the loss. I think they possessed for about 60% of the match. They had more shots on net than did the Lady Warriors, but your number one team is there because they finish their shots.
Absolutely. It's the Ontario Lady Warriors, and we got to see them again last night. And what I love about this team, we talk about that freshman impact. They've got two freshmen right now who are making instant impacts in the game, and Hattie Yukovic and Addie Pittman. They are just top quality players. What I think is so difficult for freshmen is to adjust to the speed and the physicality and just kind of the bigness of the game when you get to big crowds and fun stadiums. But these guys just hit the ground running. They get in there, they score goals, they score lots of goals. They're scoring goals in big games. And right now, that is the difference between Ontario and Clear Fork, is Ontario's ability to score goals in big games when it counts. And that's why Ontario is number one.
Hey, you talk about those two freshmen making an impact. It's beyond that, I think, Jesse. They've got 28 combined goals, I think 13 or 14 combined assists. That's nutty through just 8-9 matches so far in the season, and they're just going to continue to get better and better. They're playing some big girl soccer so far. But besides those two, you mentioned another lady who's really been scoring a lot of goals, and that's who we're going to focus in today's player spotlight. How about that young lady for the Lady Redbirds putting up 3 goals plus per match? Mind-boggling.
Yeah, Sydney Pullen from Loudonville, absolutely phenomenal player and really goal scorer. I mean, when you just get those numbers, 28 goals already into the season, I mean, there are teams that may not get to 28 goals for the season, and so she's just running through competition right now and pretty much scoring, you said, 3 goals a game. That's an incredible average for someone to have their high school career. Phenomenal player. I think she's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be interesting to watch those goals kind of keep ticking up. I looked at the remainder of their schedule. There's not a lot of super difficult games. I think that average could possibly increase by the end of the season to go over 3 goals a game. I mean, she's that type of player. It's a solid team, but she is by far the standout player on that team. And their schedule's not super tough, so you could see some pretty hefty goal scoring coming out of Loudonville this year.
Yeah, I might have to check and see what the state record is for most goals scored in one season. Potentially, she could be getting close to that mark. All right, make sure that you drop us a comment. Let us know what you think about Jesse's top 5. Are a couple of teams out of order? Would you like to see a different team crack in the top 5 by next week? Always love hearing from the fans. Okay, let's move on to the fellas now, Jesse. And just overall, what would you say about men's soccer here in the greater North Central Ohio area compared to like the last couple of seasons? What are you seeing so far?
I see equality. I think when you have a couple teams matching up, it could go a variety of ways. I think over the past couple of years, Lexington has been so dominant. Ontario has been almost as dominant. And then after that, there's been a significant drop-off.
Fair.
I think what we look at this year is there's probably 4 or 5 teams that if they match up, and they played each other a bunch of times, you really couldn't pick the winner. And so I think the competition is better, it's higher, and I think the teams are just loaded on more of a local basis. There's a lot of strong boys teams in the area this year. So I think I'm excited. There's a couple games coming up that I'm excited to see these teams play each other because they got to get a result. You got to figure out who the winner, the loser, or it could be a tie, but who's going to come out victorious in those games. So it's going to be fun to see how they play out.
Well, on the ladies' side, Richland County was the dominant place. Of course, 4 of your 5 teams. We'll see if that's the same for the fellas. Kick us off. Who's on the list at number 5?
Yeah, number 5. I think this is a young team. I think they play quite a few freshmen, but they also compete in some big games. So I love the Madison Rams. So the more I watch them, the more I make, you know what? I would not want to play Madison in the tournament. Not that everything's about the tournament, but a lot of soccer in high school, especially around here, is about what do you do in the high school tournament. And Madison's the type of team, they got a great coaching staff. They got a great nucleus of players there. They've got some young guys that the more they get into the mix, the more they get used to it, the more they realize that they have the ability to play and to be an impact player, the better they're going to be. So I would want to steer clear of Madison come tournament time. Number 5, they've lost to some of the local teams. They've got some of the local teams coming up. They're an interesting team. They're kind of an enigma because they're so young, but they're so dangerous. I think that they could be creeping up the leaderboard here towards the end of the season.
Sometimes young is good because you just don't know any better. That's why they've got 7 wins already in their first 10 matches, including they just got knocked off last night against a really powerful team that may be on your list here. So I think the Rams a great choice to at least make your top 5. Who's next?
Absolutely. Number 4 is Ontario. And now we start. I think all 5 of these teams, honestly, and I'm not just saying this just because we have a lot of viewers out there, but they're all fairly equal this year. And so there's not necessarily a clear 1 through 5. I think the end of the season we'll be able to look back and they're kind of interchangeable. But I think Ontario is a great team. They've got great players. They've got an All-American in Gage Weaver.
Yeah.
He scores a lot of goals. He's a tough player to defend. And so teams really have to game plan for him. But what I've seen with this Ontario team, it's not just Gage Weaver anymore. They've got some players who can score. They've got some players who defend. They are a good team, and I think they're able to do some good things. So that sectional, come tournament time, with Lexington, Ontario, Madison, it's going to be a fun sectional. Only 2 are going to make it the championship, but only 1 is going to advance. So it's going to be a lot of fun when we get to watch these teams match up against each other.
Yeah, they've had some really challenging matches here in the early going, but pretty front schedule heavy for them in terms of the competition that they're playing. So the 4 losses, I think you can kind of overlook that because of the level of talent that they have. And like you said, it is kind of about tournament time. Everybody's getting in, so it's better to at least test yourself, see where you're really at. That's what the Warriors have done, sitting at number 4 on your list.
This is where it might get a little controversial. I've got Lexington at number 3, who just tied the number 1 team in the state,
right,
which is, that's a pretty big accolade. But at the same time, they've lost to Ashland. And Ashland, we'll see them in the list in a little bit. And so they've got that loss on there. So right now, I had to kind of give that next spot to Ashland. Spoiler alert. But I think I like this Lexington team. They play well. They had a chance to beat the number 1 team in the state. A missed PK, a couple missed opportunities, I think. They look back at that game like, that's a winnable game. That was a chance for them to do something special there. And so Lexington is certainly, they are a talented team. And if I'm picking a team to advance out of the sectional, it's probably going to be Lexington. But looking at this list right now, I had to put up number 3 simply because Ashland beat them. Ashland did the job when it was their time to do the job, and so that's why Lexington is number 3.
They're always going to play solid defense under Peter Tem, who once he gets in the tournament, we've seen the track record. I mean, he's a proven guy at this point. And they've got a lot of fun weapons to watch out there on the field. I mean, you're seeing kids doing backflips and stuff after some of the goals that they're scoring. So I think Lexington is an exciting team that as the season flows along, I expect them to be a little bit higher on your list than number 3. But you got to go with that head-to-head and the Arrows at number 2. That's
correct. So Ashland Arrows, an interesting record to be number 2 in the area. I think 4-4-1, if I'm not mistaken. And they have some weird losses. They beat Madison, beat Lexington, got a game coming up against Ontario, took a bad loss to Worcester. Worcester's a great team, but there's some just lopsided scores in this Ashland team a little bit. So I think consistency is going to be key for them. They play a tough schedule as well, so it's not necessarily a slight at them. But 4 losses early on is certainly something to look at and kind of question how good is this team and can they win consistently. They won the big game against Lexington. I know that was huge for them. They beat Madison as well, who's certainly a much improved Madison team. But this Ashland team, can they win consistently? I'd love to see them go on a little bit of a streak, win 4 or 5 in a row, which includes beating Ontario at some point. That's going to be a great matchup, kind of a toss-up. Could certainly affect a lot of our rankings here. But right now I've got them at number 2, and the majority is because of the head-to-head win over Lexington.
No question about it. This is a team that tends to play really well at home, and I'm seeing 3 of your top 4 right now in the OCC. So we're going to get an opportunity to see a lot of head-to-heads, and maybe some things will decide themselves down the stretch. 4-4-1 record at number 2 on your list. So I think controversy might be the right word, but who's at number 1? I got to know.
It's a team from Worcester. The Worcester Generals are ridiculous this year. They have a lot of players who can score. They defend well. They play a tough schedule, play a big Division I schedule. They have not matched up with Lexington yet, and so that's coming up. They did beat Ashland pretty handily.
That's right.
So it's going to be interesting to see how sometimes you look at scores, you try and play the score comparison game. How do they match up? Well, this is, I think they beat 6-1. They beat Ashland, who beat Lexington. So you look at some of those scores. I think it's going to be a great game, Worcester against Lexington. Worcester just beat Madison the other night as well, 2-1, getting the last couple of minute goals to win it. So this is a Worcester team that we don't see a ton of it kind of over in our area, but they can play. They have some phenomenal players. They have some high-level players who are going to go on to play after high school. And right now they're winning the games they're supposed to be winning. and a lot of our rankings are based on winning. And so here we are. Worcester is #1.
Yeah, and I love another OCC school, so I think that shows you just the depth and the level of that conference and where they've elevated themselves in terms of North Central Ohio. The Generals off to a great start, of course, 6 wins in their first 9 matches, and as you mentioned, they've had a couple of clutch performances at the end to go ahead and steal a couple of victories, so that's huge anytime that you can just know that you can dig deep in the closing minutes and no matter what the situation is, pull out a victory.
Absolutely. I think it's that type of year, but this season is just going to be so much fun, especially in the OCC, that it could be a variety of teams that come away. Right now, Worcester's sitting in a nice spot, but they've got to beat Lexington, which is not an easy task. And so if Lexington wins that game, that OCC, there's a variety of things that have to happen for to kind of determine a champion there.
Right.
And so it's going to be interesting to kind of see how that plays out.
All right, Jesse, so those are the top 5 teams in the area that you've been keeping an eye on and you've been impressed with. I think the one notable team not on the list, probably Mansfield Christian with the 7 wins that they have. What about the player to watch, though, in the area? Who have you been keeping an eye on who's really been impressing with his overall individual talent and what he brings to his club?
Absolutely. Well, I think Mansfield Christian, they're honorable mention. I think they're getting votes to be in the top 10 in Division III. Their strength of schedule is probably not quite what the other teams have yet. But certainly there's a chance for them to kind of creep back into that top 5. They won't. I think they play Madison at the end of the year as their only matchup against one of the other top 5 teams. But they've got some players. They certainly are a strong team. And we talked about this kind of with the Ontario Clear Fork Madison girls. That sometimes you have a good team, and maybe just the area has a little bit better team, even though your team might be one of the top in the state.
Sure.
It just sometimes that's the way it falls. So I think Mansfield Christian could kind of make their way into the top 5 at some point. But player to watch, something I've been really intrigued by. We got a chance to see the Madison opening night game against Clear Fork.
Right.
And they started a couple freshmen, but there was a freshman they did not start, came off the bench, scored a couple of goals, and has just been on a tear. Joey Walker has just been playing at another level right now. I love when freshmen can come in. They can contribute right away. I love his mentality. We talked to him after the game. He didn't get the start, but he made up for it. He got the minutes that he wanted, and then he took advantage of the chances that he got. He's a fun player. He knows how to finish, knows how to create goals for himself. I love a lot of what he does, and I think as the season progresses, he's going to be a player to really keep an eye on about being one of the top players in the area.
Yeah, I think in any sport, it doesn't matter if you're starting or not. When you come in, what do you do with your minutes? Well, he earned in the very first match of the year the starting role because he was so excellent in that second half against Clear Fork. And just another freshman, man. There's a lot of them making a big impact right here in North Central Ohio. So the future obviously bright for soccer all the way around in our area. And I think we're in for a very fun finish to the season already. Salivating thinking about tournament time and some of the matchups that we're going to get. So, hey, again, remember, drop us a comment. Let Jesse know, where did he mess up? Maybe where was he right? Give him a pat on the back if you feel like he did that too. But we always love hearing from you, the fans. That's the Soccer Locker for this week. See you next time.